You are listening to Mr. Apex Podcast. We love MotoGP. Hello and welcome to Mr. Apex MotoGP Podcast. This is a show put together by MotoGP fans pretending to be experts. We aim to have a race review show ready for a midweek commute. We may just be punters, but we love to talk. The epic rollercoaster of Portimao resulted in highs for Bezzecchi and Marquez, but yet more dips for the beleaguered Bagnaia, as P3 in the championship seemed to slip further away. As ever, I'm your host Kyle Power, and today I am joined in the virtual shed by just one fellow MotoGP enthusiast, as co-host Jules has gone all Jorge Martin on us and picked up a podcasting injury, whilst Danny is suffering as a consequence of his own life choices. So that just leaves me with you, Matt.
Well, yes, it does. Sorry about that. You're going to be stuck with my highly uninformed opinions, but I just got to start off with, since you've banned Formula One comparisons entirely on our show,
God. Yeah.
I'm actually kind of glad because I'm here with a NASCAR comparison instead.
even
I've
worse.
decided MotoGP is NASCAR, and I have two reasons for that. Rubbing is racing, because I think we saw a lot of that this weekend. And line analysis is going to show up later in the show as being very important. And I happened to see that sitting in the box watching a NASCAR race and being able to see what the crew chief was looking at. They analyze each other's lines a lot in NASCAR.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. And thank you for losing half of our listeners during the intro. Nice one. So we'll slip straight into it then. This might be a bit of a cut down shorter show, but knowing me and Matt, it may not be because there's only two of us. So we can overview them. MotoGP returns to Europe for the final double header leg. So we've got Valencia next. Obviously, this is the wonderful Portuguese Grand Prix. Nicola Bulliger is in for Marquez after his test in Jerez. That's really interesting to see what happened there. KTM future worry as the new backers, Bajaj, are vowing to slash costs, which could impact the racing department. And Fabio Quartararo is publicly putting a lot of pressure on Yamaha, saying that he's ran out of time and patience. All sorts of stories bubbling there. So the championship standings, again at the head of the championship, Marc Marquez still has a 132-point lead despite missing several races, but all eyes are on the battle for P3 in the championship between Bezzecchi and Bagnaia, with Pedro Acosta rapidly closing in as well. So on to practice and qualifying. Alex Marquez was looking really quick straight off the bat. Also, KTM and the Aprilia were looking fast. But Matt, the one that caught my eye was in the first practice, Bulliger being faster than Bagnaia.
Yeah, that's not the kind of thing you want to see if you're Ducati. But I also got to say, I was really surprised because I sort of personally thought that he would be back with Savadori and everybody else, because it seems like to me, having watched documentaries the old days, like they used to come over and do well occasionally, but that MotoGP is now such a different discipline that I was really surprised at how rapidly he adapted to the specific demands of MotoGP.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's different tires, different brakes, I mean, it's a completely different thing. This is like I guess getting a tennis player to go play cricket. It's got ball and a bat, but completely different. So he was amazing. He was only 1 second off the ultimate pace, and he kind of pretty much stayed there the whole weekend. And Portimao, this is an amazing racetrack, and it's up and down. He does know it from his Superbike days, Matt, but that must make it almost exponentially more difficult because it's such a difficult track with so many blind corners.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about it later, but the specific habits you learn, unlearning them in a very short course of time is tremendously difficult at that level, because almost everything you do is you don't want to be thinking about. You just want to do it and not think about it. And especially you mentioned the braking and the different tires, the different braking. I think that kind of followed him all weekend. I will say about Bagnaia, though, before we move on, I'm not too surprised. This has always kind of been his pattern. Start slow, work up over the weekend, and show up on the Sunday and crush everybody, or at least that's what we saw last season when he had a bike he could ride. And we'll figure out who we blame for that later.
Yeah, that's interesting because this looked like a wobbly start for Bagnaia again. He was lounging down the timesheets, but he didn't fit a new fresh tyre for free practice. But then when actual proper practice rolled around, the one that's counting to go into Q2, he was really quick. He was like P2, like very, very quick. Like Alex Marquez looking fastest, but Bagnaia was a really strong P2 and obviously, put the manners over Bulligadere as everyone expected. A few more people were noteworthy going straight through to Q2 was your friend Iagura again, who's coming back into confidence.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned him, especially because he had the entire weight of the team on his shoulders, and I think this was only his second transfer directly to Q2. And now, granted, the Aprilia did look to be in top form this weekend as a package, and I'm sure that helped. But I will say his racing kind of shows that, oh, yeah, now, I think he and Aldeguer both are beginning to look like seasoned campaigners rather than rookies.
Yeah, yeah, good point. And you mentioned shoulder there. He has got the whole weight of the team on his shoulders because Raul Fernandez had a massive crash at turn one. It's never good to see riders making it all the way to the barriers, but when he stood up, you could instantly tell he's in a lot of pain and is desperately trying to get the marshals to get his levers off because the airbag's gone off. And apparently, I don't know the ins and outs, but I think his shoulder popped out and then popped back in again.
Yeah, in his interview, he called it like a subluxation, which is literally a thing where your joint just bends too far and it stretches out the ligaments and tendons. But I don't know. They said a partial dislocation, so I'm not quite sure if that's. There's a lot of medical speak. I think the good news is no concussion, and then he was already feeling a lot better by the Sunday.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it was a little bit too much. He tried an FP3 to ride, and this is talking from somebody who's torn their rotator cuff. I have so much sympathy for shoulder pain. It is horrendous. So yeah, he clearly made the right decision, thinking that he was going to be a danger to himself and maybe others trying to break a MotoGP bike down from 200 miles an hour, and you're weak in your shoulders. Eek.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you will react unconsciously to pain stimulus, and when you're using your body that much to throw the heavy bike around, and if you just clinch a little bit in the wrong moment, you've just taken yourself and 5 other people out at the apex of a really high speed turn. But also, and Valencia is next week. Testing is next week. You don't want to take that injury and turn it into I've missed the entirety of the test after Valencia. That's just not the place you want to be.
No, that is a very, very good point because it's crucial. I think we'll be mentioning that quite a lot through in the show because Valencia next weekend is going to be very, very crucial. Yeah, so wise decision from Raul there to sit out. So another person who got through again is Pol Spagro, who's again in with for Maverick and KTM. We've just found out today, I think Maverick will be returning in Valencia, which is really good to hear. But yes, stunning again from Pol. What a standing job he's been doing. So on to quali then. And Q1, it was such difficult conditions. There was like some dodgy weather throughout the weekend. There was wet patches everywhere. But it's Fabio Quartararo and Miller goes through. So it was the two Yamahas, which looks really odd to see them P1 and 2 on the timesheets.
Yeah, it does, but it kind of makes sense. If you consider the mixed grip nature of the track reduces their power loss deficit to everybody else. The less grip the track has, the less you having more power matters because the limit is the tire, not the limit becomes the tire, and that limit just drops in terms of applied horsepower. But also, I do got to give a quick shout out to Miller here. He was the first person to run the hard soft in practice. And that
Oh, the hot
hard
front.
tire
Yeah.
on the front wound up being the key to everybody's weekend. It had the stability to put up with the demands Portimao put on it. And I think he was the first one to see that that was the correct tire. So having the right tire combination, but also I think Yamaha themselves made some discoveries with regards to applying power out of the corners. And some Bezecchi talked about, he talked about being very smooth at Portimao because it's a high corner speed track, and becoming less aggressive and being smoother with the power. Yamaha actually, for all they have an underpowered engine, were turning the power down out of corners because the bike was just fighting itself rather than putting that power down onto the circuit.
Wow, so that's obviously, I think that was after quali, wasn't it? Was it between the sprint and the main race? But
Yeah.
that's interesting to say because everyone thinks that the Yamaha's massively down on power, and it kind of is comparatively compared to the other ones. But what little power, little in inverted commas, they can't put on the road as well. And I think that's been a massive issue of the Honda over the last few years. Is one, they're a bit down on horsepower, but two, their power delivery is too aggressive, and they can't use it via the mechanical grip that they have.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll just toss in real quick is that they didn't expect to have a good weekend here. I mean, Oliveira said they knew they would have technical issues, which was defined as traction, coming into this as their big issue. So to see them both get through to Q2, I think they got a little rub of the green with regards to track conditions, but also they did a great job optimizing what they had, and they had riders who knew how to take advantage of it. And that's absolutely crucial. I'm laughing at the Quartararo quote about Yamaha. He goes, aside from top speed, stability, grip, and the electronics, I need more of all of that. I'm like, well, yes, yes. I think every writer would like more of that, Fabio. You could maybe narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah, apart from the understeer, oversteer, down on power, shaking, chattering, and everything, the bike has two wheels. Basically,
Yeah,
is what he's basically saying. He goes, the bike's a bag of nails,
yeah,
and I
I
can't get
love
anything out of it. I like it. So them two coming through Q1 was quite good, and going into Q2 actually, there's a little subplot going on here because Alex Marquez, if he got pole and then got a front row at Valencia, could deny his brother Mark the BMW M Trophy where they win. I think it's a BMW M4. They get given that, and but Alex Marquez bins it in Q2, and then so can't get pole, and then just hands Mark, his brother, the BMW pole car. And I love the bit of bants between them going into this.
Yeah, you'd think, Mark would be busy with his recovery, yet he had time to entirely taunt Alex and say, "Oh, you never know what you find when you're shopping." 'Cause I think they hid the keys in his oranges or whatever. He says, "But don't worry, I'll let you drive it."
Yeah, it's nice, and it's quite handy because they live in the same house.
Yeah, they
So I
do.
wonder if they can go on a joint insurance policy or something like that. I know the TNT Sport guys had a very funny conversation about would you insure Mark Marquez if you're an insurance company, and they all said no way. None
No,
of us are
absolutely
insuring
not.
him.
I would insure Alex. Mark?
Yeah,
Mm-mm. No way, that
uh,
boy's got
probably not.
I mean, I guaranteed he has fun, but, yeah.
Yeah, 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 you wouldn't in general. So after Alex crashing and all the BMW pole car fun, it was Bezecchi coming to the fore on Aprilia, setting a new lap record. And again, the conditions just seemed to improve all through the sessions, but the track didn't really look up to it going to a new lap record. It just shows the progress that the bikes have come on and made. So great new lap record from Bez. Acosta getting a very strong second, and Quattararo from Q1 onto the front row, stunning. But I left Bagnaia in fourth, again, pretty strong, you'd say, and he's got, you thought at least he's going to be in the running for one of the races. Um, but no, Alex Marquez is only fifth after his crash. Zarco sixth, and Mir seventh, which is looking a really good, strong outlay for Honda at this point, but it didn't really materialize.
That's right. But did it not materialize on purpose?
Yeah, yes. Well, we'll find out as we go into the sprint review. So on to the sprint then, and arguably this was the best race of the weekend, in my opinion. The sprint was absolutely superb. And from the start, we had some great, great battling. And so Bez, I think, gets the whole shot, doesn't he? And then Alex Marquez makes a fantastic start from fifth all the way up to third. But that initial few opening laps, I love it when you've got Acosta in the mix. Just Acosta can make any sort of battle exciting.
I mean, yeah, three-ways are always more fun, aren't they? And that's really what we had the first couple of laps here in the sprint race. Just you had Bezecchi with the bike not really where it needed to be, if I'm being honest, but just the fun thing about the sprint is if your bike is a little bit off, it's short enough you might get away with it. And you really you got the idea that might happen, especially as Alex and Acosta were busy fighting each other. So you had this amazing back and forth between the two of them, Acosta and Marquez. And I'll be honest, like, I tried to watch this late at night and fell asleep. Tried to watch it the next night, late at night, and fell asleep. Like, I watched this race 3 or 4 times, and so much happened in the first 5 laps that I still like, I'm hard pressed to account for every single detail, but what really mattered was that the KTM looked like it might win, and that's a huge thing for the factory at this vulnerable position. Now they have new management. It's, they are and again, Acosta showing their worth when it's most important, so good turn of the cards there. And you had Alex sort of cementing himself in a lot of ways. It's like, "Well, yes, I am in fact the" my hats off to my brother. Yeah, he's pretty
Yeah, Mark's
good,
gone, but look at
but
me.
now he's gone. Well, guess who turns out to have feet big enough to fill those shoes? And so from the sprint race, it was just such a lovely, lovely, lovely fight to the very end.
Yeah, it was, and I like you, I was in a slightly declined state when I was watching sprint race, and mine was definitely not massive hangover, self-inflicted alcohol poisoning hangover that I was struggling with. But yeah, this woke me up massively together because I think it was 3 consecutive laps that I think Alex Marquez and Acosta were like battling. And as soon as Marquez, because Alex Marquez all weekend was so strong out that final corner that he could get alongside, he can pass Acosta into turn 1, and then Acosta would just launch it straight back up the inside of turn 3 or turn 5. And
Right.
this is why I love Acosta, because he's just a menace. He just won't give up, and he knows his only chance is to immediately fight back. And we've seen this over the years. I mean, the one tactic about this which really springs to mind from history is Rossi versus Stoner at Laguna Seca in 2008. And Rossi has always said that he knew if Stoner got away, that would be it. So he would just do anything to immediately to let the brakes off and go back. And that just seems to be Acosta's default mode of riding and just going through. We saw it in Indonesia, I think, as well, and his crazy defense. But him and Alex were swapping positions lap after lap after lap. And I thought Bez was going to get in on the action because Bezzecchi slips to third, but doesn't. And it was getting so quick. So, but going into the last few laps, it looked like Alex kind of had it won. But then all of a sudden, they close massively up in the final lap.
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. There's a couple of parts to this. One of them is if you look at the KTM trajectory, they do seem to have, and this is a bit of a mystery as to why Bastianini isn't doing better. They do seem to have a real turn of late race grip. Getting ahead of myself talking about the Grand Prix a little bit, but Acosta said, like, coming into those final laps, like the grip just came to the bike in a way that wasn't there in the beginning, which I think
And
makes
that's
his
good.
defense all the more fascinating. But we also know from Marquez that he kind of overcooked his rear tire, taking maximum advantage of that last corner. And this is the other beautiful thing. You've got a bike that's really good in 3 and 5 in Acosta's hands, and you've got a bike that kills the entire last sector in Marquez's hands. And so it just makes for the juiciest and tastiest battle because neither one can quite get away from the other. And so that chance is always there. The overtake could happen.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And this is what's good with the late race pace from KTM, because all year they've been massively struggling with tyre wear and late race tyre wear. They've been chewing their tyres. It looks like they've kind of overcome that a little bit. There was one massive moment for, I think it was in the sprint for Acosta coming up into turn 5 over the crest and had such a huge moment. And how on earth he, one, didn't go down, two, didn't particularly go wide either, somehow collected it all up. That was a proper screen biter on the way in.
Yeah, I think Quartararo had one of those as well near the beginning.
Yeah, he did,
Like,
and went
like
very wide.
the
But,
Yamaha really loves to land its rear tire, and then you just got to guess which way it's going because it's probably not the way you thought it was. And I will say, Portimao, like I've ridden two-wheeled bikes, two-wheeled vehicles, a lot of places. But I think Portimao might be the point at which I'm like, "Yeah, no, you first." Because, oh my, can you imagine? Like, I'm looking at this track, the elevation, I'm just like, "No, no, you definitely need to be missing some important part of your brain to do what they're doing."
Yeah, there's some epic shots, and the camera work this weekend in particular was stunning. That heli shot when they're going over the crest and coming down really showed you the undulations. Like, the closest I've ever come to this is doing it in VR on iRacing, and you get the sense of the undulation, and it's just like, wow. And I could never get this track right. I'm rubbish on it. But someone who wasn't rubbish, as he said, was Alex Marquez. It all closed up, and then I thought Acosta, like, he's going to do something. He's just going to let the brakes off. And I think he did. The last couple of sort of like corners or sectors where he had a chance, you could see he was so late on the brakes, and he was going to take them both down. So there was no way for him through, really, but that was so tantalisingly close for him getting his first win. It's surely coming soon. So, but Alex hung on. So it was really good to get Alex to get the win with Acosta in second, Bezzecchi third. Quartararo, superb race, hung on to P4 the entire way on that Yamaha, which, to be honest, has no right being in P4, I don't think. Digia got fifth, who, again, a bit of a stealth weekend for Digi, but the thing on the final lap, Matt, what happened to Bagnaia? He looked a bit strong. He had his usual sprint fade, but he got absolutely mugged in the final turn.
I wish I had a good answer for what happened to him there. And the only answer I can come up with is it's just a variation of his "I can't pass anybody" in the sprint race. I think, at that point, everybody else's bikes have become lighter. He's probably, because the bike, I mean, I'll just take a brief moment. The thing about the bike is it has a balance to it, and the balance works with the aerodynamics and the rider and the electronics. And if that balance isn't 100% on, you tend to wear your tires more than they should. And the tire that you abuse the most is the one that's going to cost you time. And you can look at, for example, Alex's launch out of last corner. I think he just got to a corner where the bike was weak to begin with, and other people had a better balance. So they had better tires, they had better grip, they had better corner speed. And we're just, and then there's just nothing to do. And you know this from karting too. Like, it's so important to be early on the throttle. And if you get on the throttle and get some wheel spin, or if you got a little bit of yaw, too much yaw going around, you lose that tenth or two, and then you just get absolutely massacred on the way to the next corner if people do get it right behind you. So
Yeah, and
probably some
people did.
variation to that.
Yeah, indeed. So people did get it right, because he got mugged by, it was Zarco. I think it was Zarco and Aldeguer. And Aldeguer, I think, Aldeguer? Yeah, Aldeguer mugged both of them. So
Yeah,
Aldeguer
that's
got
what
two
it was.
positions in the
Yeah.
final turn.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing.
But he was driving a bit of a train too. So that's the thing. Your defense has to be absolutely perfect.
And that's it. And that's the scary thing about this, was his pace wasn't great. He was I got it in my notes, my handwritten notes, when I was watching the race, was Bagnaia was like the cork in the bottle, really. He had a massive, it was like Bagnaia train behind him, and he was really struggling. Just sad to see. I had so much hope for him going into the race, because again, it seemed like he was looking pretty strong again this weekend, and it just started fading away. But we can talk about him a little bit later when we review the Grand Prix. So, as ever with the Grand Prix review, we like to break it up into a few little sections. And the first one I want to talk about, well, we have to, is Bezzecchi finally getting that win. And Matt, I think this is strange saying this, that's only his second Grand Prix win this year. It sounds really unusual.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely a couple that we could attribute to him. I think Phillip Island was a no-brainer. He was winning that race were it not for the penalty. And we were talking before the show. I think you mentioned, was it Misano as well, where it looked
Yeah, he was strong at
possible.
Mazzano, but it's
Yeah.
Marquez's brilliance, really, I think, prevented him at Mazzano. And then, of course, Indonesia. He was dominating the Indonesia weekend, and it was the mistake, the clash with Marquez, which then got him the penalty at Phillip Island. So he actually he denied himself 2 Grand Prix wins with that one move, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you, and I'm sure he would agree with you as well. given the dominance he showed in the sprint race at Indonesia. No, I think, and this is a conclusion that I believe Aprilia now has. I think he's now riding the bike with the best aero on the grid, and I believe in terms of the rest of the package, they're not so far off. But it was also, like you talk about the sprint race, they had not put the weekend together, and that had been a weak point of Aprilia. Like, they would be fast, but they would operationally not necessarily be able to capitalize on it fully, and, they did this weekend. They looked at it overnight, they figured out how to make the bike better, and this is the theme of the weekend: smooth is fast. He comes from a Ducati bike background. You ride aggressively to make the bike perform optimally. But with the aero they have on the Aprilia and with the nature of the Portimao track being high speed, long corners, the smoother you can be into and out, the better your lap time is and the more tire you can apply over the course of the whole race. And they made some braking changes. They may have made some engine changes, but this is the NASCAR bit. He sat down and looked at the lines Alex Marquez was riding in that final sector because that's where he was getting murdered. And he used that information in the Grand Prix to make it possibly one of the most boring things we have ever seen.
Really? So he's plagiarizing Alex Marquez's
Absolutely.
line and what the scandal,
Sorry,
if
it's
that's
not
the other way
plagiarizing,
around.
it's a tribute.
Yeah, yeah, and it was your copying is the ultimate form of flattery, really, isn't it?
Bingo.
But
Exactly.
that's a great sort of thing. So it's something that a lot of riders do, and that's why they have rider coaches sat out on the circuit watching them and what others are doing. But it's strange to hear them openly saying, "I was copying someone else's line, or I did his line and used it to good effect."
It sounds strange. I would honestly think all riders do it both to their own teammates and with other teams as well. And, like the engineers sit there with microphones and record the engines going by. They have people with high-powered cameras and video looking at the bikes coming in and out, figuring out, oh, what are they doing with their engine braking there? Oh, what are they doing with the this? What are they doing with the that? How are they where exactly is the pivot point in relationship to all of this stuff gets looked at. All of the teams look at all of the other teams, and if it works, they take it straight away. That's just racing.
Yeah. And it's great to see him putting it together. And as you said, operationally, like arguably, we've been saying this for a while now. I think that arguably the Aprilia has been the best all round package the second half of the year, but they've never really put it together. And there's been so much promise. And I couldn't believe it when he won and he crossed the line. They were like, "Oh, this is only his second race win since Silverstone." I'm like, "Wow, like crazy." Because I just in my head, well, he's won 3 sprint races, isn't he, as well? And he's been arguably the strongest rider, almost untouchable in a few weekends now, and that to only converting it to the second win, I think is maybe missed opportunities. And what must be Jorge Martin must be thinking, sitting there on the sofa at home.
Well, I think he's probably getting pretty excited to get back on a bike and ride it and get to grips with the stylistic change that's going to be required for him to get as much out of it as Bezecchi has. Because let's remember, for his brief return, he would
Mm.
have moments of speed and pace, but he wasn't really able to put a whole race together. And I think it's because uh, there's a large adaptation required, and that means you have to start thinking about things that you'd stop thinking about, and that costs you lap time, and that leads to more mistakes till it becomes an ingrained habit and it can go away again.
Yeah, yeah, a very good point because we saw this even with the great Marc Marquez mentioned this last year when he was adapting to the Ducati. I think it was still to like rounds 4 or 5. He was still saying, "I'm still doing some Honda things on it, and I'm now only just getting them out." And that's Marc Marquez, which is arguably a mercurial, godlike talent. So someone less so, it's going to take him a long time. And what is the one thing that Jorge Martin hasn't had this year? Time, bum in seat time. He hasn't had many laps on the bike at all. So you make a great point there because, yeah, he's always going to be behind the curve on development and getting used to it. So we have heard, I think it's today that we've heard that he is going to he's going to be in Valencia. So it's
He's
absolutely
gonna
crucial.
Yeah, I think he's going for the medical checks. We'll see what happens.
Okay. He should be. It's been quite a while out now, but I think it was a bit of a complex break of that collarbone. So pointless affecting himself even more.
I think it's just, what do you call it? Standard operating procedure. If you've been out for an injury, I think the FIM doctor has to clear you to be safe to
Yeah.
race again. So you have to undergo a physical, and they test, they test all the things they need to test to be sure that you can really handle the bike.
Well, seeing some of the states that some riders generally tend to ride in, I'd imagine they'll be fairly lax on some of the tests that he has to pass.
Yeah, but that is the reason why. The reason for this is ultimately, and having been a writer, like, I understand this. Ultimately, you are such a massive danger to yourself, especially when you're in competition. You will, like, I had a crash one time, went over the handlebars, had the same kind of injury that Mark has had, picked up my bike, and I was gonna get back on it, and the moment I put weight on my shoulder, I was like, "Nope," just, like, done. But, yeah, there are countless examples of riders being really injured. Tyler Hamilton finished a stage of the tour with a broken collarbone. They will endanger themselves. They just lack the judgment entirely. So that's why they have to
Yeah,
go for the medical check.
fair play. But Jorge Martin will probably be back for Valencia, which would be great to see how he gets in. So one thing on Bears before we move on, this pretty much now guarantees this win of him, and it was a dominant win as well. He looked like he had everything covered. I think it was lap 11 he decided to check out, and lap 11 is quite poignant as well, because that's when Bagnaia bins it on lap 11, and that means that Bezzecchi now has a 35-point lead over Bagnaia for P3 in the championship, and there are only 37 points available. So Bagnaia needs Bezzecchi to bin it in both races, and he needs to win both races in Valencia, which, let's face it, doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. So while we're on to the Bezzecchi thing, and we're talking about Bagnaia, we might as well quickly touch on Bagnaia and the Ducati boys and do a bit of a roundup here. So you have to say that was another shocking weekend for Bagnaia, and it's such a shame to see because he was starting strong. It looked, well, he started a bit weak, looked really strong in time practice, looked pretty strong in quali. And then, yeah, the sprint, again, slipped down to 8th, getting mugged on the final corner. But then this race, he was P4, slipping back from the top 3, and then goes down. Like, you can't be doing this.
Uh, you can't, but then, I'm gonna say 2 different things. First of all, I think it's continuing evidence that Ducati, who has said, publicly, they've done everything they can for Bagnaia. And, I believe Marquez has said, like, but, they need to keep on trying to solve this problem. No, we don't need a Pecco like this. Even Mark has, like, he's like, "No." He's like, "He's
Yeah, he's
not
trying to
forgotten
support
how to
him as
ride."
much as possible. Yeah.
He's like, "No, no. He's still every bit the rider he was last year. He hasn't lost anything. It's just this peculiar thing." But to me, it's evidence that they've got to have a clue because he showed up, was slow, and then was faster. Like, this is the kind of progression we saw last season with Bagnaia very much. He was slow, he wouldn't win the sprint, and then on the Sundays, he would just have, well, not crushing domination all the time, but, like, generally speaking, that would be Sunday would be his day. He will have worked to that. That was their aim, and they would gather maximum points regardless of the circuit. And if you just looked, to me, how quickly, like, he went from the left to the right side, it was like a flip-flop, I think. The moment he goes onto that, and the bike, the front just went so fast. The bike told him nothing. The bike communicated 0 about its intention to try and murder him. And I
Well,
I didn't, like, he said he was pushing to catch Acosta, but I didn't get the sense at that very moment that he was really asking the maximum of that tire.
I think he may have been because he mentioned himself. He goes, he wasn't entirely comfortable on the bike yet, but the 3 were going off into the distance. I think it was Quartararo, was it behind him or something? I think he
Yeah.
was starting to feel the pressure, so he was trying to push on. But I don't think this is a bike not talking to him issue. I think it was a simple, he just pushed too hard too soon, and this goes back to Bulliger a little bit because remember Nicola Bulliger binned it on lap 4 of the sprint, and what he attributed that to because that just went on him completely, was the difference in carbon brakes and Michelin tyres. And the difference between that and the Superbike was front locking. He was starting to get a load of front locking, because if you just brake instinctively really hard, the brakes are so powerful and the Michelin tyres are a bit quirky that you can actually lock the front, and the front just went down instantly. And he said that was a rookie error. And I love the fact that he was riding around in the race or something, saying he kept having to say to himself in his helmet, don't brake like Superbike, don't brake like Superbike, like try to remind himself of it. And I think what happened to Bagnaia was he went up over that crest, and as he goes crest, the bike goes really light and you have to really feather the front end. And I think he just asked a bit too much of the front. It just locked as soon as he went over the crest, front locked, and down he went. I think that was just a simple thing of just pushing too hard too early when you're not quite comfortable.
I have even another theory and a thing to say. First, about the Superbikes. I love it because do you know what kind of tires the Superbikes ride?
Pirelli.
Yeah, and what he said about it is Pirelli, when you grab the brake, it stops. With the Michelin, you can't brake like that. You have to brake late. You sort of have to ease into it, or else the tire will just murder you. But even as we were talking, it occurred to me that everybody was running the hard front tire. I think everybody who wound
Yeah.
up doing well ran the hard front and the medium rear. So one thing that's going to happen if your bike isn't perfect, if you don't quite trust it, and that's what Tardozzi says. He says the problem here is Pecco doesn't trust the bike, and we can't put the bike in a place where he feels he can. That's fundamentally what's going on here. When you don't quite trust the bike, then you're not
Second guessing, aren't you?
abusing that hard tire the way you would when you do trust it. And when you don't abuse it the way it's supposed to be abused to work, then it hangs out on the edge of its window a little bit, if you know what you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, you're just being a little cautious. The temperatures come down a little bit, and it's not even all the way out of the window. But then if you just crank it over and demand the maximum from it, it's not quite in the place to give it to you. So I could see that as an explanation as well. But the good news is, whatever the explanation actually is at least riding the bike hard enough to generate more data for his engineers. He's not backed off so much. He's not finding a limit somewhere. And it's crucial. I can't remember where I heard, maybe it was Oxley talking about it at some point or writing about it. Like, it's one of the reasons test riders are test riders. If you put them in a race, they can't go fast enough to get close enough to the limit to give the engineers usable data. Actually, it's Peter Baum. That's who it was. And this, to me, is important. They've gotten the bike good enough. Pecco is pushing it. At least they're getting some data from it that they can use going forward into next season.
Yeah, fair play. Like, I think some of the mechanics would prefer you as a rider to crash because you're trying hard rather than not crash. And I think we saw this earlier in the season with Pecco. He wasn't even having moments, so he's saying he had no confidence, so he wasn't pushing. And I think I've sat on the show and criticised him in inverted commas, because I think it's hard to criticise any MotoGP rider really that much. Criticised him, saying that he's not exactly doing what a Marc Marquez would do, what a Fabio Quartararo would do, what a Jorge Martin would do, and throw it down the road because they're trying to over push. But now I think we're seeing him. He actually alluded to this himself after his crash in Phillip Island, where he said, the positive thing is I was pushing like crazy. That's why I crashed. And he's reached that point, which I don't think he was doing earlier in the season. So that is a good point that he's released it now. So to finish up on Bagnaia, like, it's the last 4 races he's not finished now, which is crazy. Next year can't come sooner enough. Valencia, I think he just wants to get the race done and then put this bike in the bin, I think, out the back of the paddock, and he wants to get in. And he is obviously going to be the figure point and the main focal point for the crucial post-race test at Valencia, which is the first sort of 2026. Yeah, it's 2025-ish, isn't it? 2026 test.
Stop. I'm old enough, Kyle. I'm old enough. I do not need this.
Yeah. And yeah, so Bagnaia will be giving all sorts of feedback to them and hopefully steering the bike in his direction to make it preferable for him, because I think that's what Ducati need to do to make him comfortable. I mean, Marquez will ride anything. Just make sure it's comfortable for Pecco. Marquez will be quite happy with that, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's just take the 25 Ducati as a baseline for the 26. If you look at the performance of Aprilia, if you look at the performance of KTM here, They both KTM almost beat the best bike on the grid, which is a 24 Ducati. Aprilia
Mhm.
absolutely stomped it in the Sunday race. Yeah, if Ducati do not figure out the flaw in the 25 and sort it, and they don't have the performance of the 24, well, I think Mark's going to have a really interesting season, but will probably win with it. But they potentially are looking at not having some podiums on a Sunday if they don't, because nobody else on that 25, and that includes Digi, is getting close to the podium on a regular basis, and they've just been saved by the fact that Alex had the 24 and turned out
Yeah.
to be a better rider once you give him the tools than a lot of people thought he would be.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the other Ducati boys. So Digi, bit of a quiet weekend. P5 in the sprint, P8 in the main Grand Prix, the lead GP25. You mentioned Alex there. Alex, we'll briefly touch on him now. We don't have a subject for him, but another absolutely brilliant, solid weekend. Despite the crash in Q2, he won the sprint brilliantly and a very strong second in the main Grand Prix. I mean, can't argue with that. He is absolutely, these last couple of races, Matt, has
Yeah.
just cemented himself. It's like he is the real deal.
Yeah, no, he really is. He's either matured or, like I said, with a lot of riders, to get the performance you see out of them that you criticize them, oh, they're being really inconsistent. It's really because they're in the last hundredth of percent of margin they have available on the bike all the time to get that. And that just means you're going to throw it down the road a lot more. He did say, though, that he said, as soon as I saw the Aprilia warm up, I was like, oh no. And that he said that where he started would not have mattered on the Sunday. They weren't able to do the same step with their bike. And into the season, they're not a factory team, not entirely a surprise, but it shows the difference between the non-factory and the factory team there is they just didn't really make progress with the bike. They got it good, and it stayed good, but I think there was definitely a
Maximised it
better there
strongly.
in the right circumstances.
Maybe, but Aprilia was always going to be strong here, wasn't it? Because I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
Maverick Vinales last year, and it's about a year and a half since we were there. This is the beginning of last season. We were here last. Maverick, did he almost won the sprint, and then he was doing really well in the actual main Grand Prix and had that weird gearbox issue, come over the line with a wheelie and then spat him off at turn one. But Maverick was super quick on that Aprilia here last year, and fast, downforce, hungry corners
Yep.
plays into the Aprilia's hand. So that was really good. So back on Alex briefly, he's been doing really well on the GP24, but I don't know where I saw this comment. It may have been on Reddit earlier, but I saw the comment. Says I want to talk about Frankie Morbidelli a little bit because
Oh,
everyone really
okay.
likes Frankie. Seems
He had
to
an
be like
adventurous
a nice
weekend, didn't he? Yeah.
he did. And someone made a point that actually Frankie's been bad this year because Frankie's been pretty solid. I mean, he's currently sitting, where's his P5, 6 in the championship, isn't he?
He was
So,
ahead of Digi until this weekend, I think.
yeah, he was. He was doing really well. But there was a great point making. He's the only rider that has had 2 seasons on the GP24 now, which is arguably the best Grand Prix bike ever made. You could, and I hadn't actually thought about this way. I don't know who. I think it was somebody commenting on Reddit that I read. Like, yeah, he's had 2 consecutive seasons on arguably the strongest bike. You'd be expecting a bit more from Morbidelli, and he's been consistently all right. Like he's been consistently pretty solid on it, but he's also been consistently annoying the other riders. And there was an incident in practice, I think it was, a qualifying where he almost assaulted Oliveira at his own race and really made him lift the bike up and generally got in the way a couple of times. And this isn't his first rodeo, which led to him having to defend himself publicly to the other rider, saying, "Look, I'm not a dirty rider at all." He it was a distant P15 in the sprint, but then in the main race, Matt, well, first lap, to me, it looked like he just missed his braking point, had to dive to the inside, but then got a bit of karma payback.
Yeah, later on in the race, he just got absolutely smashed by, was it,
No, it was in
Espargaro?
that first.
Oh,
It was in
it
that
was in that
first. It was in that first lap incident. So I think he misses his braking point, shoves it up the inside. I think it's turn
oh,
5.
oh,
He has
right, yeah,
no
it was
points.
sorry, I was confused. I remember the incident. It's actually a fascinating incident. I don't know ultimately quite what caused this, but you
Yeah, it was
had,
missed on the camera of it.
it was Agura, so he had gone out very wide. not the only rider we saw do this, but Agura came up the inside on someone,
I think it was one of the Hondas who had to sit up, which
and
sat pole up.
they went wide, and that meant that Paul's line out of on the corner exit was also wider than you might have thought going in. Meanwhile, you had Morbidelli way out, diving back in, and his front wheel just crossed Paul's rear wheel. And, well, yes, the racing gods said, enough with you, Frankie. There's a reason you're going to the principal's office all the time, and it's not because it's never your fault.
Yeah, there's a common denominator here in a lot of these things, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's right. I mean, in Frankie's defense, I think we're all a bit of a Frankie fan, even because he seems like the nicest guy in the world, and you hear all his interviews, and then he puts the helmet on and just turns into an absolute devil. But in this one, I think he avoided. I think he took the lesser of the two evils. I think he's missed his breaking point or got a bit squirrely. Like you said, you can't really see the opening of it because they're coming over that crest where Acosta and
Yeah.
Quartararo both had their huge moments. I think he's had a massive moment, had to release the brakes. He's just gone to the inside to avoid skittling people. That then causes the ensuing carnage of maybe Agura tried to take advantage of it, goes up the inside of one of the Hondas. They almost collide. The Honda lift sits up, which then sits Espargaro up, who is also wide himself. And then Frankie cutting in, clips Frankie. A pole clips Frankie and down goes Frankie. It's just ironic that after a day, less than 24 hours after having to defend yourself, you then almost skittle half of the field. But fair play to him. He didn't. The only person who got skittled was himself. But again, there'll be more talking and rumours going around the paddock heading into Valencia.
Yeah, I mean, and having said that in a humorous fashion, one of the things for him is that he frequently finds himself in what I think we'd all sort of describe as the carbon fiber zone.
Yes.
And your probability of being involved in incidents does go up a lot. And the other thing is, and I know, although I didn't see it, I understand that he had a big accident a few years back, and always it kind of makes me think of Massa a little bit.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, he
It,
had a bit of a
it,
head injury and he had a huge crash in testing. I think it was actually at Portimao, I think.
but regardless, it's kind of almost a situational awareness thing, where and honestly, I don't know how the motorbike guys do it, but there may be some factors here that work to his credit. We may be giving him a little bit more stick than he actually deserves.
So you're saying he's had too many bangs on the head. Right, we'll move on. Poor old Frankie. He'll be all right. I think it's just very, very aggressive. So someone else who is very, very, very aggressive, and I want to talk about next, is Acosta. He's just I keep calling him a menace, but that's in a lovable, non-derogatory way. I love the fact that he just launches up the inside. I think, would it be fair to say, Matt, that he's outperforming that KTM?
Well, aside from the physical reality of you can't outperform your actual bike. Yeah, no, there's no one who gets more out of the KTM than Acosta. And I think, it's a funny thing. He's not won. Aldeguer's won, like a lot of people have won, but it's undeniable. He's a star. He's a potential Marquez level star. He came in and he was 20 last year, immediately walked in and explained to Brad how things were going to work from now on.
Yeah.
And I think you can see it in the bike development. I think they right away saw he was able to get something out of it that Bender wasn't. And the bike has continued to move his direction. It's happening at a time that's crucial for the factory. KTM, the team, is desperate to not lose him. But unlike Yamaha, we'll talk about in a minute, they seem to be giving him enough for him to continue to believe. He believes the narrative they're telling him. Like, yes, we
Yeah.
are going to, we will get you that last little, we'll get you over the line. You've got the fastest bike. You've got a whole shot that's a row and a half. Think about the good things. Think about the good things and we'll fix the rest. Because look at how your season has progressed thus
Mm.
far. They have
Well,
not
hopefully.
been sitting on their laurels.
No. Well, hopefully. And I think Maverick Vinales can take a lot of credit for that because they were copying his setups. He was running a hybrid bike of taking all the different parts. I mean, I think at one point, all 4 KTMs on the grid were all running different specs because they were completely lost. The relationship got really bad between Acosta and the team, and they've repaired that now. And Acosta has held his hands up and owned to it, saying his attitude wasn't the best because he was a very frustrated boy at the start of the season. But this is even more poignant for KTM now because Bajaj, like the company that have just taken them over and saved them financially, looks like they could be cutting a lot of the racing programs. So they want to slash the costs, and the racing dash marketing, which racing is essentially R&D and marketing, is in the target sites. And they're basically, the noises they're making, Matt, are really, really worrying noises. I.e., like, why are we spending all this money on racing?
It's grim. If he doesn't accept the return in marketing value of the investment, you're going to have a big problem. But
it's only a return if you're winning or doing well. And this is why it's so crucial that they're finally starting.
exactly. Well, not only that, but they've got a star. They've got a star. Who else has, I mean, I guess sort of Martin, you could argue Aprilia has a star. Ducati with Marquez has a star. There's only a couple of stars. There's a lot of good riders. There's riders who can win. There's riders who are supremely talented, but not everyone has a star. What my wife, who works in like Broadway, has her whole life. She says some
Flex.
people on stage have what I always call look at me. Acosta could be last in the race and you'd watch him. Doesn't matter. He's a star. Everyone's always going to talk about him. You're going to get more mentions with him on your team than you will with Alex Marquez winning the championship, just
Yeah,
because.
absolutely.
And I want to make one more point. The other thing KTM has, if we're talking about why Acosta should stay, they got Danny Pedrosa.
Oh, little Danny.
Little Danny, who had a chat with Pedro. I was surprised, like after the race, you'd expect him to be so frustrated now without a win. And it looked so close in the sprint, so close. Like, it's all good. All good. Really what matters here is not a win. What matters is the team operation. The team operation is good. We're making progress, solid progress every weekend. We show up, we fix what's wrong. And we're there or thereabouts. That's really the important thing. I'm like, wait a minute. Who have you been talking to? He's 21. Who has that attitude at 21? At 21, you're like, no, win now. Give me things. You're like a toddler when you're 21, as far as I'm
But
concerned.
that's what he was at the start of the season, and
Yeah,
now he's
right.
kind of matured as it goes.
And then he
I think
mentions that he had this conversation with Pedrosa about managing his race. So we saw a beautiful race out of him on Sunday, very controlled, understanding what he had. And then that late charge as the bike, he waited, he was patient. The bike came to him and he took advantage of it and made a real charge. And here's the thing, watching the Marquez documentary, and you're like, well, are you talking to Mark? Well, in the Marquez documentary, they interview Danny Pedrosa because Mark sees him and he says, oh, yeah, I remember Mark, like when he first was in Moto3 and maybe second or third race. And he sees me, he
monkey
comes up to
fighting.
me and he says, he asked me some questions and I told him blah, blah, blah. And then he went out next weekend and he won and he just basically never stopped.
Well, are you saying that basically Danny Pedrosa was Yoda? He's in like Yoda mode and just imparting his wisdom.
I think he's KTM's secret sauce, and especially he's exactly who Acosta needs. And Acosta's like, oh yeah, he's like, after that, he says, I think I might be talking to him a lot more. Like I might take advantage of him a lot more after what happened this weekend. And that at that age, oh wow, watch out.
Yeah, that's sponge-like. That's good because Ducati have Stoner, and now they've got Danny Yoda Pedrosa. And I'm going to start calling him in there, giving him some guidance. And the guidance could be actually good because looking at the championships with that weekend, Acosta is now only 3 points behind Pecco Bagnaia for P4 in the championships. And you have to say, if you're a gambling man or a gambling lady or woman or whatever, if you're a gambling person and you're going into the final round, I'm not going to be betting the mortgage on Bagnaia hanging on to P4 in the title.
Yeah, I'd say actually, if you're not a betting person, but you will bet occasionally when you think it's really safe, yeah, Acosta ahead of Bagnaia is a pretty good one to make.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. So it's really cool going to the last round, even though most things are wrapped up, that we've still got this sort of side story, sort of like side plot going on, which would be really good. One constant side plot that we always have going on is your feedback and your emails into the podcast. And also, we thrive. We are doing this. This is not a paid podcast. We don't take a wage from this or anything like that. So a like and subscribe goes an awful long way to promote the popularity of the podcast and help us out a little bit. So why don't you give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube or your desired podcast platform of choice. And you can also get in touch with us and send us an email for some feedback, for some show ideas and stuff like that. And you can send that email to mrapexmoto@gmail.com. That's mrapexmoto, all one word, at gmail.com. Right, Matt. So you mentioned stars, and KTM have their star. Yamaha could almost be losing their own star. And Fabio Quartararo was riding the wheels off the bike all weekend. You mentioned it before, and they're taking some power out. They were changing things, but P4 in the sprint, P6 in the main race, which again, I don't think that Yamaha was really worthy of those positions. What are Yamaha going to do to try and keep him?
Well, deliver a bike that has more top speed, stability, grip, and better electronics for starters.
Everything.
All the things. No, I don't really know where they are. He was unhappy with the V4 test. I'm sort of over here pretending to be, I'm a pretengineer and saying, well, look, the issue right now isn't the power of the V4. The issue really is going to be the chassis dynamics of the V4. The
Yeah.
packaging and what it allows us to do, specifically with, from the Jack Miller interview, specifically with how low they can get the pivot point, and then how that affects the chain force and a lot of other things that I don't understand, but they sounded like good words, so I would say I said them
And they
now.
can mount the engine differently with a V4. It's a more compact and different
Yeah.
package that's going to change the weight distribution and everything.
We'll give them more adjustability with the pivot point, which I guess, according to Adam, is like really important in how the bike handles. And the thing is, that means that you can get more of a balance where you want it when you want it. That means that the rear of the bike, when the right height device is engaged, when you get more traction on the rear. If you have more traction on the rear, then the bike accelerates better. One of the biggest problems you could see Yamaha having all the time is spinning the rear wheel. They just struggle to take the
Yeah, and
power they do have and apply it.
Yeah, and Bagnaia actually said this, didn't he? He was like, I was sitting behind Quartararo, I think it was in the sprint, and then he was like, the guy's a god. I can't believe what he was doing to overcome the spinning and how unstable that Yamaha was.
Yeah, unlike McCoy, spinning in a straight line is not what you want to be doing. Ha! Reference. Okay.
You've been watching the documentaries, haven't you?
Yeah,
Like,
I have.
you're clued up now.
I went through a whole spell of watching all the old ones from late 90s, early 2000s. So I learned a whole bunch of really interesting stuff about the bikes and the way they get ridden, because they do such a super job. They're on Amazon Prime, at least in the US. They do such a great job.
Yeah, I think they've got faster, and they've got faster too.
Fast, and there's
Ewan
faster, there's
McGregor,
fast
wasn't
and
it?
faster, both you and McGregor. And they've also
Yeah,
got
they're
the one
really good.
about the Laguna Seca race with Rossi, Hayden, and
Is it Stoner? Was it
yeah.
2008? I've
No,
not
it's
seen
like
it.
2000. I thought maybe it was early. Anyway, it's like the doctor, the Kentucky Kid, and the Tornado or something like that. But they start out by just going through an entire lap of Laguna Seca at like super slow motion replays like that. They talk about he's like, oh, and here your springs are here your suspension's fully compressed, and if you like that kind of detail and you have that, go watch it. It's sorry, sorry to drag the show off track here.
No, that's all good. So we're going to drag it back on track, and talking about dragging themselves back on track. And so I don't think Yamaha, let's not talk about his performance over the weekend that week, because it was amazing. It was great. Yeah. P4 and P6. I mean, you can't say much more about his fighting it. But the bigger question is, because what are Yamaha going to do now to try to keep him? Because I think today, we're recording on a Tuesday for once. Today, I think Toprak was testing the Yamaha V4 at Aragon, and this is all unofficial sort of whispers and stuff like that. So I think he was testing the V4 at Aragon. Do Yamaha commit fully to the V4 on the Tuesday post Valencia test? Like, do they even give Like they might have the rides with an inline four to try and compare back to back, but surely, Matt, Yamaha have to just throw all of their eggs in the V4 basket.
Yeah, you just have to trust you gotta trust the dyno and you gotta trust your engine guys that they will be able to deliver the power you want in the package you've requested it in. I think and I think the thing is, Quartararo is being, I don't know if he's, like, trying to get more money out of him or he wants to go to another team who's made him a good
He just
offer
wants a
because,
bike.
look, if I was in his position and I could do what was being done with that bike, and I said, "Okay, right now we have a bike, the engine isn't fully up to snuff yet, but it'll be 80% better than what you have now in terms of its handling." And my response is, "It's slow, I don't care, I don't like it, give me another team." Well, I find that confusing, but I'm not a MotoGP rider, much less of a world champion MotoGP rider, so there may be something to his point.
Yeah. Well, he's basically saying my time's running out. And I think it's just pressure and screw going on. It'd be interesting to see what Yamaha decide to do for 2027 when the rules change. So this is
Yeah.
why I think a lot of commentators are saying, just go with the V4. You've got a year of development, basically. But is that enough for Quattararo? I think it might be too little, too late. So I think he's locked in for next year. But then if it doesn't go well next year, then he can jump in. But again, it all gets reset again in 2027.
It does because it's a different displacement and everything, but I would say to you, I think the thing about writers too is in a lot of ways they have very short memories. They could be terrible at the beginning of the season, but if we look at
Oh,
Acosta's arc,
Acosta. Yeah.
yeah, if he gets the last 4 or 5 races and suddenly it's come together, does he bolt? Does he have to learn how to write an entirely new package? As adaptable as they are, we saw Marquez taking some time to get up to speed with Ducati.
Mm.
And right now, he knows that Yamaha, if he goes to another team, maybe he's just, maybe he gets a Bezecchi Martin kind of thing happening. Just like there are risks to the other side of that.
Yeah. And it's interesting and impactful to that would be the concessions and where they are. So we'll
Yep.
move on to our final topic, the honourable mentions. And one of the things I want to talk about was Honda just missing moving up to C grade concessions. So the concessions are A down to D, basically, and D being like you can do lots of tests, you can make lots of changes throughout the year. And Matt, like how close are Honda to being bumped up a tier in the concessions?
They are 9 points away, which I
Wow.
didn't think about it at the time. But when I read that and I thought about Mir not finishing either race, suddenly it all made sense.
Yeah, because he had so Mir was actually looking really quick during the races. He was, I think, qualified 6th or 7th. Was actually looking pretty strong again, and Mir has been really strong the last few races. It's great to see. But yeah, he had a clutch problem in the sprint, and then some mystery electrical whatever it is issue in the race. But you're right. If I'm Honda, I'm going to be instructing all of my riders, like in Valencia, I was like, don't you dare score more than 9 points. Like, don't you dare. If anything, if I'm doing all of the food in the food truck, I might be like spiking their food or doing something like this, or spiking their drinks to try and give them a bit of a tummy problem, because surely it's in Honda's best interests to keep the concessions so they can keep making changes, which is going to build for 2027. I mean, Matt, surely it's, for me, from more of an engineering side, it's a no-brainer. Oh, if I don't score 9 points, I get more of an advantage next year. It's the final race. There's not much pride on offer. We've had our podiums. It's a no-brainer for me not to score those 9 points.
Yeah, it is a no-brainer, and I agree. If I'm the engineers, I'm just looking at this, I'm like, "Oh, come on. Come on, guys. Screw it all up this weekend. Don't do a good job." But I will say, I think as far as Honda is concerned, for them, it's a badge of honor to be out of
Yeah.
that level of the concession table, especially because we know that Yamaha will not be. Like, it's like that moment when you go bowling and they take all the foam things out of the gutter. You're like, "Yes, I have
Stop
arrived."
taking the stabilizers
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's, I think they're working at cross purposes. I think the writers would be happy about it. I think the team, from a marketing point of view and from a pride point of view, be like, "Yes, we dug ourselves out of this hole. We're competitive again, and we've beaten Yamaha, who were really their competition in this weird thing that you win by losing."
Yeah.
But they'll take that win apparently.
Yep. No, they will. And I think you're right. Honor is the important word here with a Japanese manufacturer. And I think they'll be happy to get rid of the concessions just to move up out of it. And also, they're reporting back to main bosses in Japan saying, look, we've actually moved up a tier, we're progressing. So I think from a business boardroom point of view, you'd want to move up. But I bet the engineers and designers on the ground are like, nope, we'd rather have those concessions, please. So it'd be interesting to see how Valencia pans out. Someone else I want to briefly mention, because we are running out of time, was Buliga's debut. I thought was amazing. Yes, he made a rookie error in the sprint with a crash, for locking the front, which you cannot blame him for at all. But in the actual main race, again, he held that 1 second pace difference from the top, which I think is amazing on such a difficult track. He finished P15 in the main Grand Prix, but he made a massive mistake and ran really wide, lost a load of time, but then instantly caught this group up in front of him. And if you look in front of him, so just ahead of him was Miguel Oliveira, home race. You've got Alex Rins, Jack Miller, Luca Marini, and all of these guys were kind of in one big group, and Bulliger caught them and was sitting behind them. So I think, and he ends up scoring a point. So to score a point on your debut in MotoGP, coming from a different series with minimal testing, I think puts him in hero territory, in my opinion. I don't think he could have really asked for more than that.
Yeah. I was amazed. Like I said earlier, I didn't think this was possible anymore because of the differences between MotoGP and Superbike. I think he had a junior background to an extent. But one, impresses me because the adaptations needed to be competitive. Points on debut is always something that will make you sit up and take notice. But it gets me especially excited to see Toprak come into the sport because Toprak beat him
Oh, yeah.
very handily. So there are some jewels hanging out over there in the World Superbike, and maybe MotoGP shouldn't get so complacent about how important it is. And bring some people over and let them have some rides from time to time, see how they do.
It's been the age old thing. So back from when I was watching, I was a member back in the 90s World Superbikes. It was Carl Fogarty, the English dude who was dominating, and he never really went to Grand Prix. He had a few wild cards on the Cagiva. I seem to remember it never really worked out for him, and he never really made the full jump over. The people who did, I mean, Troy Corser ducked in and out. There was Chris Walker coming in. I remember, just going off the top of my head now. I remember Ben Spies in the early 2000s when he come over and did all right and did pretty well in MotoGP. I mean, Nicky Hayden was a MotoGP world champion, even though it was a bizarre season, but he was a double AMA champion and came over, didn't do well. So he adapted really well. Cal Crutchlow came over from the World Superbikes and did pretty well in MotoGP, but not amazing. Troy Bayliss is the big one. Troy Bayliss is the one that stands out for me. So I think it's 2006 at the end. He'd been was a MotoGP rider with Ducati for a few seasons when they came in 2003. I think he went back to World Superbikes, won World Superbikes, and then got a wild card race for the final round in Valencia and won it, which is absolutely epic. But nobody really remembers that because everyone remembers Rossi with the furry number on his back, binning it and handing Hayden the championship. I remember that. But the little side plot of that round was Bayliss when it won. And so we have seen people from World Superbikes come over and be semi-successful, but none of them have ever really gone on to do amazing things. And I think Toprak could just be the man, because Toprak is the Marc Marquez of World Superbikes, and I'm very excited. And again, going back to our Yamaha talk, this is why I really want Yamaha to do something special. And I think if the rumours are to be believed, him going straight on testing the V4 today, I don't know whether he had an inline 4 available to him, but the V4, I think, marks their intentions of what they're intending to do next year. So unfortunately next year there's going to be no Miguel Oliveira either. This is his final home round as a MotoGP rider. I mean, he's had a real rough time the last couple of years, and mainly through not really his own fault. He's been harpooned by multiple people and injured, but he won this race. I remember on a Tech 3, was it KTM years ago, he won this race. It was 2020, it was during the weird COVID lockdown, and there was no fans there, but I remember him winning this race, and it was amazing. So sad to see Miguel sign off for his final race. But talking about signing off, we're almost signed off for the championship then. So that was the final round. We look at the standings, and unbelievably, Marc Marquez still has a 100-point lead over his brother, despite missing all of the rounds. Bezzecchi looks pretty much nailed on in third now, but all of the eyes are on P4 now in the championship, with Acosta only 3 points behind Bagnaia. And the intra VR46 battle can still be decided between Fabio Di Gianantonio and Frankie Morbidelli. And, those two don't particularly get on. They've had a few little fiery words in the press, but there is only, it looks like, 12 points between them.
12
So,
points.
yeah, very, very close. So that's all very, very close and stuff to look forward to. So as ever, we like to finish up on some awards for the weekend. And Matt, you always steal mine anyway, so you might as well go first because it's just tradition you stealing mine.
Okay. This would be, which award are we doing first?
Oh, sorry, it'll be Rider of the Weekend.
A Rider of the Weekend. Well, that's a bit of a challenge, but I'm going to go with Acosta. Did I get it? Did I win? Did I win the prize of scooping your choice?
I think you win. Yeah, I was taking my drink there and completely caught me off guard.
Sorry about that.
I think that's hard to argue against Acosta at all. Don't need to give reasons. I mean, he was outperforming the bike, and yes, I was 50-50 between Acosta and actual Bezzecchi for getting his win again, because I think Bezzecchi did an amazing race.
Then I'll let you do Bezzecchi in a second, who I think also deserves it. But then I'll throw an honorable mention of Quartararo.
Oh, yeah. Good shout, because I think he maximised his results completely. So, moment of the weekend then.
You're going to be a bit surprised at this one. Actually, I have two. But my real moment of the weekend is the unofficial Air Miller Award.
Yeah.
Like, they were measuring his
slow-mo shots.
No, someone sat down and measured the distance like it was a ski jump. And by the end of the weekend, all of the riders were trying to take, the exit of turn 8. They were trying to get more air than him. So the unofficial Air Miller Award, I think, has to be my moment of the weekend. My other moment of the weekend, and I think we talked about this a little bit ahead of the time, is both the rookies, Aldeguer and Agura. I said Rubbin is racing, and the two of them put some hard moves. The one on Bender, Agura stood several people up. They were suddenly like, no, champ, you deserve no respect from me. I'm taking it.
Yeah, great point, because that Aldeguer move on Binder, I'm amazed that wasn't looked at by Race Direction. I mean, to be honest, I think that's probably worthy of a long lap. We've seen long laps penalties given out for less than that, I think. And for some reason, that escaped Crayfar's eyes completely, because he then removed one of Binder's wings. And yeah, Binder, he gives as good as he gets and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm amazed at that. So nice one for mentioning that, because yeah, I completely forgot about it. We hadn't mentioned it at all. So my moment of the weekend is on a similar theme from yours. My moments of the weekend is that Helicam shot coming back as they drop down that thing with the Miller air corner, and you get to see the undulations. And in general, just the camera work this weekend was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we spend all the time, I'm going to get my one Formula One reference in. It's shocking in F1 at the moment. It is really bad. The direction and the camera angles they use are just terrible. It's lovely to see MotoGP getting it so right this weekend. I think I've seen online quite a lot everywhere. Like, everyone was just praising the camera work was just wonderful this weekend. So that was really good. What would also be very, very wonderful if you go and follow Matt. Matt, where can people follow you?
As always, I'm at MattPT55 on your socials. Swing by, say hi, send me an email, and yeah.
Awesome. And you could also follow the show on your podcast platform of choice, or give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. We'll be back again in only a few days to review the final round. It's a long championship, but it's finally over. So it'll be the final round from Valencia. As always, thanks for listening to Missed Apex MotoGP.